Hello Neighbor is a suspenseful sandbox horror game with some puzzle elements thrown into the mix. Explore the neighborhood as you try to figure out what your odd acting neighbor is up to. Why are they constantly hiding in their home that they don't want you to see? Well, there's only one way to find out. Hello Neighbor has been available on PC and Xbox One, but now is available on PS4 and Switch for $40. Hello Neighbor has you play as a young child playing in their local neighborhood. Trying to catch the rolling ball he's been playing with, our young protagonist comes across an odd-acting neighbor who seems to be trying to hide something in his home. Hearing some sort of screech or scream coming from inside his home, you know there's something up with this guy. However, get anywhere near his home and he'll just stare at you until he comes chasing you out the moment you step into his yard. It's a really simple story setup, but one I think many people can relate to growing up. Almost everyone had that one neighbor that just didn't sit well with them for whatever reason, and that's a relatable moment in the essence of this game's story. Luckily, all these questions get answered by the end of the game in a 3-part act, albeit with some questionable gameplay design that indeed does deliver on the suspense and scares, but not without a bit of frustration first. Everything about this game's setup sounds cool to me. You're exploring a mystery in what looks like a retro neighborhood from the 60s. Although everything else looks normal, you hear a scream coming from your neighbor's house in what feels like another mystery horror story from It or Stranger Things. Like I said in the story section though, a lot of this is ruined by the frustration in level design, and that's really by the lack of logic in the puzzles. The entire game can be beaten in a matter of a few hours, anywhere from 7 to 10 hours, and it's ultimately a game that you can beat in a single playthrough. Gameplay is broken up into 3 acts that get unlocked when you beat the act prior to it. These acts have you infiltrating your neighbor's home in different periods of time, or more realistically, failing to constantly infiltrate your neighbor's home as you try to figure out the logic of the puzzles. Hello Neighbor feels like a classic point-and-click adventure game where sometimes it'll adopt logic and other times it'll just completely ignore it. For example, it makes sense to have a wrench assemble and disassemble some parts of the game. It doesn't make sense that wrench would be hiding inside of a fridge for some reason. Stuff like that feels frustrating and just bizarre, especially because Hello Neighbor does reward critical thinking and logic. For example, you can reach a secret area by quite literally just stacking up boxes and then climbing them. It's a simple solution to a puzzle, but if it works in thought, it should work in the game. Sadly, that doesn't really redeem the flawed gameplay design and what feels like unfinished gameplay. Hello Neighbor claims to have learning AI for the neighbor that gets better at setting traps and learning how you play the game, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. Throughout my gameplay, if I wasn't in his home, the neighbor would just go on about his day. When I actually was trying to sneak into his home, his traps seemed a bit random. Furthermore, there were weird moments where he'd be able to sense where I was in a completely different part of the house, and other moments where I'd be able to hide right behind him and not be noticed. That level of unpredictability with the AI can certainly lend to some suspenseful and horrifying moments as the game intends, but also some moments of frustration too. Now I mentioned that the gameplay felt unfinished, and aside from the AI, it's because of how and what I can only describe as jank that the gameplay feels. Keys that are used to unlock doors and puzzles can get stuck on walls, the neighbor can clip through different objects, and well, it can create very humorous situations where you mess with the neighbor AI, but when you're trying to take the game seriously to beat it for a review, it can be more annoying than funny. Imagine how purposely and humorously Octodad is broken, but that now being in a puzzle game that wasn't meant to be broken. That's what Hello Neighbor feels like. Hello Neighbor looks like an early Pixar film that just wasn't finished. That's to say that the animation for things look like the early days of movie CG, although slightly rougher. On PC, things look a bit better as models are sharp and vibrant in color. It's certainly not a dramatically looking better game on PC, but it's a noticeable difference. On console, things only get rougher, with models looking blurrier, with the worst being the Nintendo Switch version. I already thought that the PC version looked a bit rougher on the edges like a bad Unity game, but the Nintendo Switch version certainly proved that it could look much worse. Music and audio in Hello Neighbor was solid, and if anything, were some of the best parts of the game's presentation. When just wandering around the neighbor's house, you'll be left to hearing the ambient sound of the world and the objects around you. Feet stepping on grass, the front door opening, things like that. However, once the neighbor has a hunch of your whereabouts, the dramatic ominous sounding music kicks in, and it certainly gets your blood flowing as you try to figure out the unpredictable AI's movement. It really sells those moments of suspense, and it's one of the most redeeming features in Hello Neighbor's presentation. What was a bit disappointing was that specifically with the Nintendo Switch version, I really didn't notice any good use of HD Rumble. I assumed we'd get at least some sort of small vibration when the neighbor would catch you or just interacting with objects like opening a door, but nothing came back in return. The simple use of HD Rumble to further sell the presentation of this game that already was pretty lacking to begin with seemed like something that was easily overlooked by the developers when porting this over to the Nintendo Switch. Hello Neighbor had an interesting premise that genuinely had me interested in the game's story. That was about the peak of the excitement for me. Outside of occasionally trying to mess with the bad AI, I found the finicky level design and controls to be more frustrating than humorous. Puzzles seemed all over the place, occasionally rewarding logical thinking with secret rewards in areas, but then completely ignoring it for the main objective areas. Ultimately, Hello Neighbor falls into that category of games for me where the premise and the idea sounds really cool in thought, but just wasn't executed that well. Go back, redesign, and polish the gameplay up, and I'm sure you'll have an addicting game on your hands at some point, but the way it is now, it just feels poorly put together with a cool idea in mind. If I had to give it a score, I'd give it a 5 out of 10. That does it for my review of Hello Neighbor for the Nintendo Switch, PC, PS4, and Xbox One. If you enjoyed the review and found it useful, then please consider giving it a thumbs up. You can also click on my face to subscribe for more videos just like this every single week, and check out my most recent videos on the left side of the screen. Thank you all very much for watching, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one.